Ready?
Yep, okay. As soon as we get the recorders going here, we'll get started. Okay, it's 5 o'clock on Wednesday, December 14th, 2016. I will call to order the meeting of the Park Committee, and present are all the persons, Chris Reary, Andy Nicholson, John Vanderleest, and myself, David Dunn. First item is approval of the minutes.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the minutes of the meeting on November 30th. Moved by Alderman Nicholson, seconded by Alderman Weary. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, minutes are adopted. The agenda, are there any additions or corrections to the agenda?
No.
Okay, we have a motion to
So
approve.
moved.
Moved by Alderman Nicholson, seconded by Alderman Vanderleest to approve the agenda. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. First item is consideration with possible action on the donation of parcel 21-49-1 located on Superior Road near Baird's Creek. And we were just handed a map that indicates the location of that. It appears to be excess right-of-way owned by the Department of Transportation. Is
That's correct.
that what it is?
Yep.
It's just outside of my district. I think it's in Alderman Dwayne's district, but it's adjoining our parkway, so. Anything to add?
Sure. So you were right, the Department of Transportation does own this property, and they're in the process of trying to dispose of miscellaneous property that they no longer need. DOT recently contacted the Parks Department and expressed interest in donating that parcel to the city at no cost. The parcel is .66 acres and is heavily wooded. There are informal dirt trails running through the property that the public does use. We are in support, staff is in support of this donation, and the DOT has indicated that they can deed it over fairly quickly to the city if this is approved by the City Council and Parks Department.
Motion to approve.
There's a motion by Andy to approve, seconded by Alderman Vanderleest. Is there any discussion? Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Number 2, consideration with possible action on the donation of parcel 21-1979-3 located northeast of the intersection of Elizabeth and Main Streets for the Baird Creek Trail. This also is in my district, and everybody has a copy of the map. It's basically a floodway along Baird Creek, right?
Correct.
Motion to approve.
Okay.
Second.
A motion by Alderman Nicholson, seconded by Alderman Weary to approve. Are there any questions? The only one I had is that are we, for the use of the public, are we going to differentiate at all between where the private and public land is?
No, we're not at this point. So the trail's already in place. In 2004, the city purchased an easement, a permanent trail easement from the property owner. Now the property ownership has changed, and the new owner wants to just donate it to the city. So nothing is anticipated to change. It's already developed.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, number 3, consideration with possible action to replace 2 underground hoists at the park shop for $79,695.
Keith.
Okay, Keith?
Evening, gentlemen.
Everybody knows Keith, right?
Keith Wilhelm.
Park Superintendent.
Park Superintendent, yeah.
In 2015, we detected that 2 of our park shop in-ground lifts started to settle on their own while in use, indicating a potential leak. We asked for $17,000, a repair estimate last year, in the 2016 budget, and worked to fix the problem in March of this year. An RFQ was sent out to repair the lifts, and only one qualified vendor, Petroleum Equipment Services of Green Bay, responded. They provided a list of repair options and their associated costs. Before the repairs began, we had them test the lifts for leaks, and they both leaked. Both lifts are in need of repair as soon as possible. First, the safety issue of the lifts falling while someone is working beneath them, or with the vehicle or the piece of equipment that's on top of them falling off of the lift, either onto the ground or onto the person beneath. The second concern is that the longer we wait, the more oil that could potentially be entering the ground under the lifts below the floor. More oil entering the soil may add additional cost for remediation. So therefore, we'd like to complete these repairs sooner than later. The funding for these repairs will come from the following sources. The balance of the hoist repair money that we had in the 2016 budget, the funds acquired from better than expected auction proceeds from our old equipment in 2016, and from very favorable pricing in this year's vehicle and equipment purchases.
This is something that we thought we would have a minor problem with, and that's when we bonded the original $17,000 from the 2016 bond. And then this year, we also had put some money in the bond for our requests that we will look at in 2017, because when we start this project, we noticed that we had those additional leaks of oil going into the ground. So we had to stop the project, we had to have somebody come in, we had to reevaluate the process of what it was gonna cost to fix this. And so that's what we did, and we're gonna look to use those dollars out of our existing budget so that we have no additional, we're not asking for additional money at this point. We're saying we have to do this, something's gotta give, and we gotta give up something to get this done, because this is an emergency situation. So that's what we did.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay. Any motion by Alderman Van Leeuwen, second by Alderman Nicholson to approve. Any questions or discussion? Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thanks, Keith.
I'm not moving.
You got, you're the next one too, okay. Consideration with possible action on funding the replacement of City Hall elevators using Packer excise tax infrastructure funds. Okay.
The passenger elevators at City Hall are the original equipment from 1956, 60 years old. The elevator experts say that typical safe and useful life for an elevator system is 30 years. We've been fortunate to have them limp along for the last 30 years, especially the last 10 to 20 years. We've had increasing problems with them in recent years, which has prompted dozens, if not hundreds, of service calls. The fire department has been to City Hall again this year to extricate people out of the elevators. In fact, last month, I don't know if you noticed, that one of the elevators, the north one, was down for over 2 weeks, waiting for repairs. As these elevators have aged, the parts to repair them and the people who know how to repair them are getting very scarce. In fact, some of the parts have to be made from the plans because they're not available anywhere. The modernization, as they call it, proposed would not only make the elevators ADA and fire department code compliant, but also the elevators would be safer, more energy efficient, much more reliable, and save us money on our monthly maintenance fees. The upgrades proposed would basically replace the DC motors up in the penthouse with AC motors. That would help us save energy. It would have new programmable microprocessor controller with precise leveling system, safer as there would be no more leveling issues when you come to the floor. I don't know if you've noticed that, but we've had several issues with that. New positive position indicators, which would eliminate the way the cars currently chase each other for each button pushed. So I don't know if you notice it, but if you're on one floor and you push it, both elevators come to you. There's no reason for them to do that. So this would save on energy. New door operators, they'd be more reliable as door problems cause most of our service calls and shutdowns. We've had to shut those elevators down because the doors aren't working properly. And the modern equipment we needed for this, with the modern equipment, the need for service work and a reduced monthly maintenance cost because we now have newer equipment. The cars themselves and some other operating equipment would be saved and reused. The cars would get some slight cosmetic improvements, but the main operating equipment that no one sees is where the work would be done. With as many meetings and visitors as City Hall gets, the elevators must work properly and reliably and safely. The work is 30 years overdue, and the new work will get us through another 30 years. I'm sure Dave is aware of this elevator issue. The updated estimate for repairs for both elevators from the city's current vendor, the company's called Kone, is $430,000. The DPW originally and Parks Department since have been asking for this modernization for decades. I know I've had maintenance of City Hall for 12 years, and when Ray Kurth handed it off to me, he had been working on it for 10, trying to get these elevators fixed. Certainly, in the last 6 years, the park director has had this project high on the bonding list, but other priorities were selected. With all the safety and reliability issues we've been experiencing, and with the likelihood of increasing problems in the near future, we should not delay this important project.
Okay. Any questions?
Where's the, there's no financial, where's the financial?
Well, $430,000.
So I mean, it's not in the, I mean, it says consideration, replacement elevators, and usually $1
Yeah,
amounts with it.
well, if we had to replace them fully, they gave us an estimate of almost $400,000 apiece.
Okay.
So we're not doing the whole shebang here. We're
Oh.
not putting in new cabs and everything else. This is the work, I have the quote here if you really would like to look at it.
No, that's fine, you can just give me the gist.
So, you know, we tried to save as much money as we could by not
Right.
going high class with the inside of the cab and stuff like that, and just put what we needed to make these elevators work. And they quoted us $430,000.
I remember when I handled maintenance years ago that there wasn't a lot of competition out there. I think there was only one vendor that really could service those elevators. I don't know if that's the case anymore.
Not really. We've had, I think, 4 different vendors in the last 10 or 12 years. One company went out of business, and that gentleman sold his business to Kone, so then he came back and helped work here because he knew our elevators. But there still is Otis, Bronson Tyson, Krupp, Schindler, and Kone. They all do elevator work, and I'm sure they'll all bid on it.
Okay,
Yes.
so you're going to bid it
Yes,
out?
we
Yes,
are going to
absolutely.
bids and bring it
Yeah.
back to the park.
Oh, okay, I thought you were looking for 430 right now.
No.
No.
Oh,
Well,
okay.
we were looking to have approval to use some of that money to go and do this, because we didn't want to go out and get quotes until we knew for sure if we would even have money.
So you need a quote first?
We have a quote, but.
Or you
what
need a
we
bid,
would-
or what are you looking for,
We would
Donnie?
definitely send it out to bids.
Okay, so you're looking to send it out to bid?
Yep.
Okay, that's my motion.
And then we can't do that if you don't approve that we have money from the infrastructure to pay for it, because there is no money to pay for these elevators.
I think what they're asking is that we approve up to $430,000 of
Okay.
stadium, excess stadium tax money to replace the city hall, or to replace the equipment for the city hall
Yes.
elevators.
Yep.
Subject to a bidding process.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay, so where in this, I know the excess sales tax, but where's it coming out of?
Well,
Infrastructure.
Okay.
There's about 1.8 million, I don't know the exact number, that hasn't been allocated at this point.
So
And,
we're not taking it away from Department of Public Works, are we?
Well,
You could say we are, if, you know, you were gonna give them the 1.8 for the road repair, you could say that.
yeah. But
Okay, now I
Steve's not here,
understand.
but I'm sure that he's aware of this.
Yes,
Okay.
Oh.
yes, he
And
knows
is
that.
probably supportive of it, right?
Well, I'm sure he's supportive of
Okay.
getting roads
Well,
done, but,
What we would do, I would think, would be to have a resolution go to the council, just like we have with
Correct.
the other
Correct.
excess stadium money. And we do kind of like we did with the water, the lead pipe issue, we'd say up to $480,000. Something like that.
Okay,
Maybe-
thank you.
Maybe get that to the next council meeting so that we don't delay it.
okay.
Right?
I've got a
Okay.
quick question, Dave,
Yes, Sean?
on, my thought is that we need a little more input as far as, we got quite a few people asking for the money. We're talking about lift stations where we have problems with water
Mhm.
and on the west
Right.
side and things like that. And I thought when we were doing infrastructure, we were going to kind of help out with the roads and with the lift stations and stuff like that. I know this is another issue that's very pressing, it has to be done as well. Just like the gentleman that needed the 2 lifts repaired for, in other words, that are sinking into the ground and leaking oil. That's a very critical, I think that has to be done right now. I'm sure this is right close by, but I think we'll have to find a way to get this project done. But I'm more thinking on, on the rest of the excess Packard tax money, that we could, kind of stick with the roads and the lift stations, and, that's kind of some people are,
When you look at the money that's set aside for infrastructure, well, first, we're not going to have enough to fund everything.
that's right.
And secondly, it really is kind of offsetting bonding, because, you bond for something, or you use that money, and if you use this money for certain purposes, then you'll have to bond more for infrastructure, for the lift stations and other things that they had identified. So it's kind of.
I think we'd have to add it to the list.
Which hand do you take it off of?
There,
There hasn't really been a process established yet for how that infrastructure money would be established, but it's on our agenda tonight, and what we're hearing from staff is that we can't delay with this work. We have to have this work done, and unless somebody's got a better way to pay for it. Yeah. Okay, Randy.
Yeah, thank you. I'd just like to remind the committee that when we did sort of break up the Packer tax money into economic development and infrastructure, that it was determined and made very clear that part of infrastructure is parks. So it's very appropriate to use some of that money for parks.
Who made it clear, Randy?
I did. Before I voted, I asked the mayor.
That's a matter of an opinion.
And well, it was during the meeting, so I assumed everyone heard.
I heard what you said, but
Well, there was
the question is, do we agree with it or not?
Well, it was a time to disagree then. I mean, I'm assuming since we voted on it and it was made clear that it was for parks and no one spoke up against it, and both the mayor and our president said it was, that's why I voted the way I did.
Well,
If it would have been a point of discussion,
It's a matter of opinion, Randy.
Yeah, well, that came up in the context of whether park projects fell under economic development or under infrastructure. And I think that the discussion, at least at council, is that it's really not economic development. It falls more in the line of infrastructure.
Sure.
We've already allocated the economic development money, so,
That's what you mean, Randy, right?
yeah.
Yeah,
So,
okay.
Yeah.
I was understanding it was the other way around.
oh, yeah.
Okay, so yeah, you're right.
Yeah. I guess we can send a recommendation to the council, draft a resolution to that effect, and if you want to discuss it further, we can, but unless anybody has a better way of paying for the elevators. Celestine, did you have any input on that, on how we should pay for the elevator repairs for City Hall?
I do not.
Okay. Other discussion?
Well, Steve Grenier is not here. I'd just like to know how much he needs for the lift stations.
Well,
Because there was a comment that, Dave, you made that he's probably on board. Well, I'd like to hear from him.
yeah, we can talk to him at our next meeting, maybe
Right.
talk to him before the council meeting, and
Okay.
we're just forwarding a recommendation on to the council.
Well, I understand.
We do skip our first meeting in January, so if we don't take action today, it won't be for a month.
Well, we could have another meeting.
Yeah, but then you'd have to schedule a council meeting as well, and follow.
Well, that's okay too, isn't it?
Well, maybe, I'm not the one to call a council meeting.
Well, if we need to,
Yeah.
I think it'd be okay, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it very likely would, but is there a reason to hold up on it?
Well, I don't know. I gotta find out how much we need for these lift stations. 'Cause,
I'm sure
that's
Steve
been
will tell you.
our high priority before this. This is brand new.
Well, I'm
I
sure
mean,
s-
the first I've heard of it.
I'm sure Steve
We've
will,
been looking on the lift stations for a long time.
I'm sure Steve will tell you that he can use every dime. Yeah.
Well, I know that, but I just want to know how much we need for the lift stations first.
Okay. I might have the numbers that he put together earlier, but
Okay.
what would you like to do with this issue tonight?
Don't be, all you're doing is looking for a bid, right, Donnie?
No, I need to have money
Okay,
taken
well,
from
I
the
can't, I'm not gonna
infrastructure
support it
that
until
we-
I need to know what Steve needs, what we set aside for the lift stations, before we start dipping into that. Maybe there is enough money, I don't know, but I gotta find out.
I don't
Okay,
know. either.
Alderman
I
Scannell.
think it's vital.
If I could just suggest that, if you made the recommendation to council and we don't have the information by council, we could put it on hold then. You could,
We can,
that way, if we got the money, you can go forward and we can get this.
right.
Uh,
That's what I was looking for our chairman, I mean, what do you?
Yeah, well, I know Steve's going to be here shortly. I saw him walking out about an hour ago, and he said he was going to be back shortly, so. um,
Can we just hold and just
You want
just
to
hold it right now, and if Steve
want
comes,
to-
we can ask him, we'll come back to it?
Sure, why don't we do that?
Okay, I'll make a
Okay.
motion to that effect.
Okay, motion
Thank
by
you.
Alderman Nicholson to hold this till later in the meeting, seconded by Alderman Weary. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Okay, number 5, consideration with possible action on a request by Alderman Scannell to consider in all or in part $150,000 to Red Smith, $250,000 to the Wildlife Sanctuary, $200,000 to the National Railroad Museum, $17,500 to Whitney Park Neighborhood Association, to be financed with Packer excess tax infrastructure funds. Alderman Scannell?
Okay, thank you. I put this forward because I know, like, for example, Wildlife Sanctuary, they've been anxious to get at this money for a while. They're doing their capital campaign, and it did come before finance and was kicked out because it thought it should be done through infrastructure, I believe, is the process of it, or it wasn't appropriate to do it with the ED money. So the reason I came up with these 4 was 2 of them, of course, were mistakenly put in the ED money, the Whitney Park and the Red Smith. So I think it wasn't appropriate to use that money for those park projects because I thought we agreed at council that park projects should come from infrastructure, not ED. So that's why, did you just want to go back?
No, we'll stay with your comments.
Let's hear yours first, and then we'll hear
Okay.
from Steve.
All right, so that's why Whitney Park and Red Smith are there. The Red Smith money was much smaller, and I just went with their original request because I thought that was their original request, and I didn't know how you wanted to handle that, if you wanted to honor decide to follow what the Finance Committee recommendation was, or if you thought there was enough money to give them more. I think their park is certainly, if I could read a letter from Jane Hanson, the president of the Neighborhood Association. She could not be here, she's out of town, she's in Michigan. She asked me if I could read this, if you don't mind. Okay, I'm sorry that I could not be with you this evening. I'm out of state. We're looking for bathrooms at our city park. We are far down on the list with the park department, so I applied for monies from the Packer excise tax. Our neighborhood is growing so fast with new families, with young children, looking back at the summer and early fall on just one night, and there are many more such nights. There was 4 soccer teams, 2 football teams with parents and other siblings watching the games with 1 porta potty. Another example, one day, and again there are many more examples of this throughout the summer, there was 6 child care buses and a large school bus full of kids and child care staff, along with the local kids, and 1 porta potty. When we had our neighborhood night out this summer, we had 350 people, the neighborhood association, and they had 1 porta potty. They need to rent 3 others. So please consider the request for funds for the Packer excess tax that they originally applied for. Our hardship, if we do not receive these funds, we would have to wait for our number to come up with parts, which would be 10 to 14 years. By receiving these monies now through the Packer excess funds, we would save the taxpayers money, and when our number would have come up, and we want to continue to grow the neighborhood and the tax base. And certainly, I think it's a park that's big enough and happening enough that certainly I think we should, they are deserving of some bathroom facilities there, whatever you decide on, but I think that's a reasonable request. For Whitney Park, I don't know if there's anybody here for them, but okay, you can speak up later. But again, the reason I put them in there is because, again, it wasn't appropriate to give them ED money. For the Wildlife Sanctuary and the National Railroad, I'd like to kind of take them together, because to me they're very much related in that working with a lot of young professionals. Green Bay is noted for being home of the Packers, but we're a growing city, we're a changing city, and we're kind of struggling a little bit with an identity. Everybody keeps telling me, we keep saying we're more than the Packers, but what are we? Well, I think one thing we are is we have one of the most unique amusement parks in the country. I don't think there's anything else like it. And with that is the Wildlife Sanctuary, which is very unique. It's got some great unique programs that are a model to all the surrounding area that many people envy and are trying to model after. They can go more into that here themselves when they speak. So I think that's definitely something we should be supporting and promoting and doing what we can for them. And the same for the National Railroad Museum. Up until recently, I always thought they were in Ashwaubenon. But they're Green Bay. That's Green Bay. I mean, it's surrounded, they're an island. It's a Green Bay island, but it's Green Bay. And I think that's an asset that we have terribly underutilized. And that, I mean, it's the only national museum in the Midwest. I just this summer went to national museums in Washington, D.C., where most of them are located, and they're phenomenal facilities. They're worldwide attractions. I think with this facility, that's going to be year-round, and I don't know if there's anything they can show, but it's a fantastic facility. If you haven't seen it, you can certainly make an appointment with them, and they can show you everything. It's going to be a worldwide attraction. And I think that, again, is something we should be getting behind as a city and promoting and integrating into our what we promote as a city and what we do as a city. So I know their original ask was $250, and we did give them some money through ED. But I really think whatever more we can give them is money well spent and well worthwhile. And I asked for the full 200. I wish I could have spoken to them before I did that, because I don't want it to look bad on their campaign if they don't get the full ask, and I know there's a lot of competition on that money for so many things that may not be realistic to get it, but I wanted to make a dramatic statement that this is a valuable asset to this city that has been terribly underutilized, and we need to be aware of that and start getting behind it. So whatever we can do for them, I think is just the right thing to do. So.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Grenier, could you come forward, please? Committee had some questions before you got here. About you had suggested, I think to us at the Improvement Services Committee earlier this year, possible uses of infrastructure, of money from stadium tax for infrastructure. And what is your thinking on that today?
My thinking is I've already directed staff to abandon all the plans that they started with the infrastructure money, because there's way too many competing needs and we seem to be at the bottom of the barrel.
Okay.
If you wanted an honest answer, that's it. We started off with $2.8 million worth of allocation. $1 million of that was retracted to close a gap in the budget. There's been requests, as Alder Scannell was brought forward, there's been requests from Alderman Weary to fund the Colburn Pool. My staff dedicated 3 months worth of time and came up with a list of projects that exceeds $20 million. And every time that a new agenda comes out for a committee, one committee or another, there's a request for that stadium district money. Taking a look at the list of projects, I think 2 of these might qualify as infrastructure. One of them was I'm drawing a blank, the Whitney Park. And when the Whitney Park project came before this committee several months ago, it was paid for. That was gonna be donated. Now they turn around, they want $17,500 for something that they told this committee that they were going to pay for and donate to the city. So I'm a little confused with some of these requests. I think the $200,000 for the Railroad Museum, I think that's kind of a stretch to include as infrastructure money. That was requested under the ED, but at the end of the day, you guys are, the committee, you're gonna make a recommendation to the full council, and the full council is the one who controls that money. So if there's any left over at the end, we'll be happy to spend it on projects we've identified.
The first discussion on this came up talking about the City Hall elevators. Do you have any thoughts regarding that? And do you support that, or do you?
Well, do you know what they're looking for, Steve?
I have no idea what they're looking for.
Okay, well, you gotta fill
It's-
them in, Dave.
It's,
Okay.
He doesn't
but
know.
at the end of the day, you guys have discretion over that money. So
But-
wherever you spend it,
Yeah, I
we will do the
understand.
best to make sure that
Okay, I got a question.
we utilize that money as
Yeah.
best we can.
Well, the estimate to repair the City Hall elevators, not complete replacement, but to repair it, is $430,000.
Mhm.
And those, there's a desire to do that as quickly as possible. And of course, you know how it is, where's the money going to come from? It is something that have to be bid out, so, you know, there may be competing vendors and the price may be less than that, but they think around that ballpark,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
So the question came up, well, how does that affect projects that were on the list for public works infrastructures?
Obviously, it displaces projects that we had identified.
Okay.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I think specifically it was lift stations. Do you have a ballpark idea of how much a lift station would be?
The two that we identified are together about $390,000. Maybe a little bit more than that. We had in excess of $1.3 million worth of additional street resurfacing projects that had no sewer associated with them, so we could just go in, repave the streets. We had another basin that we identified that had about right around $1 million worth of storm sewer improvements that we were looking at to alleviate some of the street flooding out of the 9 basins that we had identified in the report earlier this year. And then we were looking at $500,000 worth of railroad improvements. So we had the 2.8 spent and then some.
And am I correct that some of these things that, you know, at least the higher priority ones would likely be proposed for bonding?
No, these are exclusive of our planned program for next year. This would all been in addition to what we had proposed to get done next year.
Okay.
Got a quick question, Dave, whenever you're finished, for Mr. Grenier.
Pardon?
Whenever you're finished, thanks.
Just got a question.
Okay. Andy?
No, he does.
John?
Those lift stations, is that a critical situation as far as flooding on the west side? You know, we've heard a lot about it in the springtime. We heard a lot about that they needed these lift stations. That was kind of one of the ones that we had talked about for the infrastructure that we'd like to get done with that tax money, with the excess tax money. I think that was.
Those were part of the areas, yes. There was also some areas on the east
I'd
side
like
we
to
were
see those
looking
get
at.
done. You know, people that have their basements flooded and what have you. I mean, that's just, top priority in my book.
Well, we had engineering work done to survey those priority areas for storm sewer work, right?
Yeah, we've actually had design work started on that.
Had the design work done, so it's in progress, and, you know, I don't think it's anybody's desire to hold that up. I think that's something that we probably want to proceed with one way or another. I don't know.
At some point in time, it may not be this year.
Right.
My thought is I'd like to see that get done with the excess tax money.
Okay.
Definitely priority.
Yeah, okay. So, well, let's talk about the elevator, City Hall elevators. What are your wishes?
I'll make a motion to deny, because I think we've robbed and basically dipped into the DPW infrastructure funds, which should be high priority, because everybody in the city basically benefits from that. And I think it's a higher priority than the elevators at City Hall. So I'll make a motion to deny.
There's a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. You know, I'm just gonna say that I think that, you know, it's been brought to our attention that there are safety issues involved here, and I think we have to address it one way or another. If it isn't this, we have to recommend it, you know, to the finance committee for funding under notes or something. I don't, you know, I
Okay,
don't think
that's fine.
I don't think we can just ignore it.
No, I'm not saying that, Dave. I mean, it is important, I'm not saying that, but I just feel that the money that we have with infrastructure is a higher priority. So with my motion, I would like to add that we send the elevator issue to the
bond.
finance,
Okay.
and they can decide if they want to bond for it,
To recommend. an
recommend
appropriate-
bonding.
Appropriate financing,
Right,
or financing options.
right.
Okay.
Would you accept that?
Can we proceed with getting bids on it in the meantime, or no? Okay.
Well, I can have Keith ask and maybe work with some of the vendors and see if they would give us enough, you know. Usually they don't like to do that unless they know for sure we're really gonna move ahead and fix the project.
Is that the type of bidding that would occur through Public Works,
Yes.
or sending
Yes.
out a
Yes.
bid packet on it? that
Correct.
kind of thing? Okay. Alderman Scannell.
I'd just like to know if we go the bonding route, about how much, when do you think this would be addressed then? I mean, how much more time?
Well, I don't know when we're gonna bond, but I would suspect we would try to bond early, because as you remember, all the equipment
Yep.
was taken out of the budget, and we need that equipment. So I don't have an exact date that's set by the mayor, but I would assume it would be sooner than later.
So necessarily wouldn't put it off that much then necessarily as far
Yeah.
as getting the work done?
We could delay it 3 more months if we had to, and then decide. We have just been dealing with these, like we said, for 10 years. And we've had so many problems, especially this year. We've had firemen taking people out of the elevator because the doors wouldn't open. We've had tripping situations because when they open, it doesn't meet the floor. And, you know, people have fallen. So we've had those situations happen. And as you know, they're 60 years old. They're down more than they're up. So if everybody understands that.
No, we
you
should have
know,
bonded before then, years ago.
I tried, Andy.
Yeah.
I tried for the last 6
I
years.
know you have, Donnie.
To put these elevators in the bonding, and
Yeah.
every year they got eliminated.
Okay.
So
I know.
I'm just saying, hey, this is where it's at.
No, I think we should move forward and
And so
bond
that
for
everybody can
it.
understand, you know, where it's at, in case the elevators go down.
And I'm not here to compete with Parks Department for this money. The money's out there. That's up to you guys to make the decision. Whatever there is, we'll put to good use.
Well, I think it's a case where we have to spend what amount of money we need to make those elevators safe and dependable. And really, it's just a question of where the money's gonna come from. So, we don't have anybody from finance here today, but, you know, I think that's an issue that we can try to work out with our finance director, our interim finance
Well,
director. and-
I think the route to go would be for us to put it back in the bond again, request this year, and when we bring that forward, we can have that discussion.
Sounds good.
Because
Okay.
I don't feel that finance has $400,000 laying around to fix an elevator,
Yeah.
so.
Okay, so the motion is to recommend that the requested amount, $430,000, be placed in the 2017 bond issue for replacement of City Hall elevators?
Yes, I
Is
second that.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, motion by Andy, seconded by John. Chris?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Donnie, Director Kramer, I do remember you over the last decade mentioning the elevator and the frustration of not being able to get it past, you know, the mayor and into our bond. and that's unfortunate, and then here we are today. And, I'm inclined to putting it into, our stadium tax money, but if there's a genuine support for putting this into bonding, and it will get done, then I'm fine with holding off. I think we can wait a couple months. It's unfortunate, we should have almost $3 million to work with, but as we all know, $1 million of that disappeared on budget day, so we just have to do the best we can with what's left. But as long as there's a commitment to get this done next year, I'm fine with not doing it tonight. I don't want to hold off, though, and then not have it bonded. Then you have the worst of both. So I want to make sure there's a commitment, and maybe we can even bring it back up again at council next week. Because if there's no commitment to bond, well, then we do need to put it back in here, because it needs to get done.
If we put an affirmative motion forward to include it in the 2017 bond issue, then, we'll be on the list for our consideration when we get all the bonding requests. And I think that's a prudent way to do it. I think a couple of months, so.
Yeah, we have to hold on.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Okay, Alderman Scannell's request. We do have people here that represent the interests that are before.
Make a motion to open up the floor for
Okay, we
interested
have a motion
parties.
by Alderman Nicholson to open the
Second.
floor, seconded by Alderman Weary. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, opposed? Okay, motion carries. Okay, we'll open the floor. Maybe we can start with Whitney Park, because there's been some discussion on that in the past. Garrett, can you come forward? I don't know if you were at the council meeting at that point or not, but there was some discussion when the item came up about that the item was before the park committee in March, right? And that the park committee was told there was going to be private money to light the parks. So the question was, well, do they really need this? And what's the status?
Yep, we have raised $17,500 as a private group towards the lights, so the total cost for the lights is $35,000, and that's why I'm requesting the grant. It was a true matching grant, knowing that we've done, that much, and then asking for the contributing amount.
Okay.
I got a question, Mr. Chairman. Do you want to take this one at a time? I mean, there's a couple different issues here.
Yeah, I think I think where there are questions on these, we should ask them one by one and
Right now,
then discuss the whole thing at the end. Is that
Sounds good to me. I just want to know what direction we were
I just
at.
thought we would talk about Whitney Park first because that
Okay.
was that was carryover from council meeting.
My recommendation would be to approve this. In other words, it's a 50-50, he's gonna give 50%, we're gonna give 50%. I would say that we approve this, it's a matching fund, I think it's a good thing. And if it comes out of the excess tax money, I'm fine with that.
Okay, other discussion? Okay.
Just so
Donnie?
you're aware, the motion at that park committee was that all costs would be covered by Mr. Bader. That was the motion that
That was
we
the motion.
proposed at that meeting, so. just so you're
Yeah, I
aware-
remember that.
So you're aware of it.
Mm-hmm.
And Director Kramer, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, that was the understanding those lights were going to be paid for by,
Right,
Private
all
entity?
costs were going to be fundraised by the group and paid for by Mr. Bader.
so there was no talk of a matching,
No,
because no funds were
I wasn't
approved at
aware
that
of
time.
correct.
If I may?
Yeah.
Sure. At the time from that point on to now, when we've looked at different lighting schemes, different types of lights, and then installation costs, invariably, like other things, costs go up and costs change. So whereas a project was scoped to be closer to that 17.5 or maybe 20 to begin with installation costs and different lighting level needs, those costs have risen.
If you don't get the funding from excess stadium money, would you scale it back, or what would you do?
Well, the scaling part goes to a determination with parks on what lighting level we can have and then what other funds we may be able to fundraise. So does it automatically kill doing the project? No. Does it indefinitely delay or
Yeah.
suspend it? Yes.
Okay. Anything else you want to ask?
I can answer any other questions if anybody would like. There's a full information packet we have together on it. I can send anyone if they'd like it.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. Well, why don't we talk about Red Smith, Barb? Now, my understanding on this one is that the total cost of doing it, of running bathrooms there, and I guess, well, what was like 175 to 180,000, something in that range, right?
Correct.
And that there was a potential to raise some money?
There is, and that's, Randy read the letter already. I know I was going to do that, but
Oh.
in addition, that's right. In addition to that, in talking to Jane last night, the Red Smith Neighborhood Association isn't 5013C,
C3.
C3. It isn't. And so there's, you know, I was asked to find out how Colburn did it, or is it possible to go through parks to get donations?
For Fisk and for Colburn, sorry,
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, we went through the Greater Green Bay Community Foundation because they do a
Oh,
majority of the work. They're very good at
Okay.
it, and it saved us a lot of time and money in
They were
putting
your
things
conduit.
together. Yeah, they were the
so
conduit.
we would have to ask them.
Yeah.
That would have been, do you think they might, we don't know.
It's up to
We
them,
don't know.
yeah,
All
they-
right, we
they-
could ask them, because we didn't have a way in order for people to have a tax deductible
Yeah.
contribution, which we thought would really be a problem for raising money.
Yeah.
If people couldn't deduct it.
Do we have a long-range plan as far as, you know, what we'd like to
Dwarf
do
bathroom.
at Red Smith and where we are today?
Yes, we do have a long-range plan. I do have that here somewhere. Ultimately, I can't find it. Oh, here it is. So what we would do is add bathrooms to the open shelter, and then also at some point then close half of the shelter, because right now it's all open. We would be looking at doing an asphalt path to connect the parking lot to the school, and then all of the amenities that are in the park would connect off of that main path. And then also improving the ball field. Right now, it's an informal practice ball field. There's a desire by the neighborhood to actually formalize it. The kids are growing up and now they're in organized sports, whereas before it was a young neighborhood and they weren't in organized sports. So now they want to improve that ball field. And then the last thing would be to install basketball courts, one basketball court with
I suppose that's all on the master list that we have,
Correct.
projects that have been
Yep.
pending some
Yep.
10 years.
Yep, and that master plan was approved probably 15 years ago when the park was originally developed. And so those items were all reviewed with the neighborhood. It came to park committee for approval, and nothing's changed since then.
Is it still 10 to 15 years out before we would have a chance to get that?
No, so what we would do is, as you said, this is 15 years old. So as we start to build things to the park, we bring them obviously in front of the park committee. And at that time, we have those discussions with those neighborhood associations and neighborhoods again, and say, is this still what you'd like to see the next step of your park be? So we have those discussions, we come around, and nothing's really, you know, set in stone that if we put this 15-year plan together, that now this is what the neighborhood really wants. So we work together with them, come up with a proposal and bring it forward to the park committee.
Tony, we can always move that up. I mean, I see that agenda of all the parks and their wants and needs.
Every year, as you know.
I mean, we can move up and push
Every year,
back.
as
I
you
mean,
know,
it's like
when
a
I
chess
come-
game.
When I come to you guys
Right.
and I say, what do you want a bond for? I give you that priority list. Some of those people have been waiting 10 years for a project to
Right.
go. But you guys have that voting power, that if you want to move something out that list and move it to a priority, you have that right.
We can move Red Smith up to a priority,
Well,
correct?
It all comes down to how much money we have every year.
Correct.
And, you know, I certainly understand some of the parks that are on the list are CDBG eligibles for projects. So as CDBG money is eligible, that might be one of those projects.
Correct.
Projects up. So we always look at what kind of funding we have. And on some of the projects, we've had donations, community donations, you know, things like that. So we do the best we can with what we've got.
I don't know if our bond request will include a lot of those things, because as you know, we have that pool money. And now we're looking at the elevator money, and that may be just what we bond for, you know, at that time, depending on what you guys want to do. So I don't foresee us saying, coming to you guys and saying, hey, now we want all these park projects when we're bonding all this money. So you tell me, do you want it in there or do you not want it in there?
Right.
Mr. Chairman, or Director Kramer, how much is it for the bathrooms? What's the total?
It would be, well, we got a quote last March, and these are last year's number, and it was about around 175,000. So 150 would not be enough to put those bathrooms in, unless you're going to fundraise for the rest of it, or what are you going to do? So,
Yeah, well, that would be the plan.
yeah.
Well, Donnie,
Mhm.
you just mentioned, you know, what are you looking for from us? If we want to move up Red Smith and at least take care of the bathrooms or basketball courts, or you mentioned a couple other items I can't remember, but, you know, why don't you bring that forward and we'll take care of it?
I can bring it
I mean,
forward at that time. and-
That park,
I'll bring all the
there's
projects.
there's a lot of people in that area. That
Mhm.
park will be utilized. I think that would be a high priority project, more than a couple other parks in the city. I guess that's what I would be looking for.
Every alderman has projects they want completed. You know, that's why we have a list that is long as, we have like 100
I understand.
on that. And so.
But I would like to see Red Smith moved to more of a high priority than the other parks.
Yeah, you
Is
could.
there any discussion?
That's what I would be looking for.
Is there any discussion on use of Packer excess tax money?
Are you looking for motions right now, or are you just taking?
Well, let the floor open.
Yeah.
Let's just discuss it at this point.
Right.
I, personally, if we're just discussing it right now, I'm in favor of using some of the money. I don't even know if we need personally to require fundraising for a bathroom. I mean, if they want to fundraise for the basketball court or something like that, that's different, but, you know, if we need to have our citizens fundraising for a bathroom, for God's sakes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anybody else? Okay.
I would strongly suggest that whatever you think that's going to cost, that you add at least $35,000 on top of that, because as things sit right now, we're going to have to contract out design services on that. With engineering being backlogged, we're not gonna be able to do that design work in-house, so we're gonna have to hire out, plus we need a contingency fund on construction. So whatever you think the anticipated cost is, I would strongly suggest adding $35,000 on top of that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, well, let's discuss the rest of it, and then we'll see what direction we're going to make on this. Wildlife Sanctuary, $250,000. I know you had a fun drive out there. Would someone like to speak on that? Mike?
Well, if I could, sure.
Mike Reed, our Sanctuary Director.
If I could.
Next one.
We're looking for an addition adjacent to the Nature Center. This expansion is to accommodate our increase in our education programming mainly, in our rentals. As you can see, it's about 12,800 square feet, and our Friends of the Wildlife Sanctuary are committed to raising $3 million to do this project for us. We are asking your consideration for the $250,000 to show a commitment by the city for this project. This helps our fundraisers go out in the community and show that there's a solid commitment by the city for this project. Our projections, when we went through the numbers, it will increase our revenues, and we feel that this project would pay itself off the $250,000 back in about 6 years of increased revenues. So it is a win-win, both in the private sector and the public sector joining together to get a project like this done. Our demand for our 4-year-old nature-based kindergarten, we have a waiting list that we can accommodate another classroom already, and with our other programming, and the demand is there. We have about 400,000 visitors a year. We are part of that the Bay Beach amusement park area that is estimated to generate about $59 million a year in revenue for the city. Just in our volunteer sign-in book, we had 41 different states and 14 different foreign countries. And we do, whenever there are outside activities, Packer games and things, we do see that increased visitorship here. So I think it is important for the economics of tourism in Green Bay also. There are Friends of the Wildlife Sanctuary board members here, and I guess I would turn the floor over to them unless you'd have a question for them.
Could I ask how far along in the fundraising you are?
We have approximately 1.7 million pledged or raised at this point.
Okay. All right, thank you, Mike. Any questions of Mike? Okay, other people like to speak? Okay.
My name is Richard DeBrew. I am a Fowles Board member, Friends of Wildlife Sanctuary Board member. First off, I'd like to say, appreciate everything you guys do. I've been through some finance committee meetings now and the park, and you've got some difficult decisions, so my hat's off to you. You do a great job. On behalf of the Fowles Board, I'd like to kind of let you guys know what this private-public relationship is. Yes, the Wildlife Sanctuary is a city park, but a lot of that infrastructure, nearly all of it, was private money raised by the Fowles Board for those projects. The bridge, for example, this beautiful, and by the way, if you haven't been there in the last couple of years, please go there. There have been some major improvements there, and it's a wonderful place. But that bridge was built by the city, but there was a shortfall, and our Fowles Board, and I don't recall the amount of money, but it was tens of thousands that we put into it to make sure that that project was going forward, because that old bridge, probably one of your memories of that was always mine, was that old bridge. But that's just one of the projects that we've helped do. But most of the infrastructure that is there, the rocks, the waterfall, the tunnel, and Mike could probably speak to a lot of that, was private donations. And this $250,000 isn't just a gift, it's kind of it's helping the Fowles Board continue what we've been doing to keep the Wildlife Sanctuary a modern project that serves not only the people of Green Bay, but as Mike said, people from all over the world, in the country for sure. And this money will go a long ways to keeping, well, let me put it this way. The money that we raise, and we do this volunteer, we're all volunteers, we're not paid for any of this. The money we raise also saves the taxpayers any money that they'd come to. So what we're asking for is kind of an investment into the wildlife sanctuary that, as Mike said, we've shown projections, and these are modest projections, that in 6 years, that $250,000 will more than come back to the city of Green Bay. So it isn't, yes, it's a request for $250,000, but it's not, I don't look at it as a cost. I look at it as a real investment that is going to pay back more than the money going in. And from a private citizen, that makes sense to me. So with that vein, I thank you for your time and hope you consider the $250,000.
Well, thank you for all the work that you do and for all the board members. Would others like to speak on it? Keith Pamplin.
Hello, I'm Keith Pamplin. Been around a little while. By the way, I also want to add on that elevator issue. Having been an employee for 38 years with a disability, when that elevator's down, it's very difficult for disabled employees to get up and down from 6th floor or any floor. So I think you should think about that, not only for employees, but for customers who come to City Hall. I can remember many times staying late because the elevator didn't work to get down. I'm a member of the Friends of the Wildlife Sanctuary Board as well. And again, I would like to remind you that this is not somebody else's park or project. This is the City of Green Bay's park or project. And I don't know how many other City of Green Bay projects you have that you have a team of people coming together to bring $3 million to the table to make it a better place and to keep it as a prime tourist attraction for the City of Green Bay. And also, I think you have to please consider the partnerships that have been developed to develop this K-4 nature-based kindergarten, which is just fantastic. If you haven't been out there to see the kids, it's amazing. But this is the kind of thing that makes the quality of life in Green Bay better, and I think your investment will go a long way. Of course, when we're out asking for funding from donations, the first thing everybody asks, what's the city's investment? And, you know, with this investment, that'll help us raise that $3 million. Thank you.
We're getting a $3 million build, a $3+ million building for.
Pardon?
We're getting a $3+ million building for maybe $250,000. Okay. Anyone else want to speak? Come on forward.
My name is Tim Enright, and I'm also on the Falls Board. And just would like to give a real-life example of bringing, as Alderman Scannell said, bringing revenue into the community. Our daughter lives in Verona, Wisconsin, and children, 6, 8, 7 years old, and all of their friends have children the same age. And it is a big deal for those mothers to get together, and they get together and they plan a trip to Green Bay, and a lot of the time it will be Bay Beach in the morning, Wildlife Sanctuary in the afternoon, vice versa. They will stay at a hotel, they'll eat in the restaurants, and they'll have a lot of fun, making Green Bay a destination other than the Packers. So if you could consider us, we would sure appreciate it. And any questions, contact any of us, and we'll have the answers for you.
Okay. Well, thank you for being here, Tim. Okay. Anyone else on the Wildlife Sanctuary? And any questions that the committee has at this point? No? Okay. Then let's talk about the Railroad Museum. Jacqueline? Okay.
If you don't mind, I know there's a couple of you who haven't seen pictures of the project, so I wanted to give you a and throw things on the ground at the same time, apparently.
Thanks.
I don't know if you have that. Thank you. So, first of all, I wanted to thank all of you for your support of the project and the City Council. You know, this is one of those projects that I think a lot of people don't realize how it impacts the city and that we are on city land. I had the opportunity to talk to the mayor and some other people over the summer, and over everyone's like, I didn't realize that this is a city park. And we actually are becoming a bigger attraction here in the last 6 years since I've been on board as executive director. I was looking at our numbers just last night, and as of December 1st, we've hit 100,000 people. 87,000 of those, or about 87% of those, are actually from out of town. We get people from all 50 states, over 40 countries in 2016 so far. We're still getting a lot of people in, and it's not, well, we always do see more people coming when there's Packers, but we're not dependent on the Packers. We're bringing people in all year round, and you know, we've been a very good city organization, except we're looking at becoming better. We want to be able to continue to grow, to continue to bring those people in, and to have the infrastructure in place specifically to accommodate them. As we've been having special events and even a lot of our daily things, we had one day in the summer where we had 7,000 people. Not enough parking for that, not enough space in our buildings, and a lot of our pieces that we're holding in public trust, you know, those trains as well as the smaller railroading objects, which we have about over 100,000 of, actually don't have good storage facilities that will keep them in the public trust for the next 100 200 years. We're here to hold on to those things for as long as possible. So that's where we're trying to increase the infrastructure, both for the objects as well as, to bring money into our community and to make that facility as comfortable as possible for the people who are using that. I know, looking back at our lease with the city, since 1973, we haven't received any money from the city until the bit that we received from the council. And in asking for the $250,000 in our initial proposal in September, we were looking at that as a way both to support, some of that basic infrastructure, like the parking and some of those things that you need to have around the larger building. But it also helps us leverage some of the organizations that we're asking for funds. We're going outside of the community. I was down in Kansas City in November speaking to one of the Class 1 railroads. We're looking at the 7 Class 1 railroads and asking for over $10 million for them, bringing that money into the community, and of course bringing jobs in here to construct a building that's probably going to take us 2 years to get up and going. So we're really looking for your support from a couple different levels to maintain your land, of course, to bring, eventually be cleaning up the waterways, make that more of a family-friendly park-like site, as well as to start drawing money in other areas. So I guess that's kind of a summary of where we're at.
Okay, any questions?
Not I.
John? Okay. Great project. I urge everyone to get out there if you haven't seen it to do that. There is a small monument there that identifies it as a city park.
Correct.
And that will remain. So, Chris?
I do have one question. Thank you, Ms. Frank. It's good information here. Can you refresh my memory? Did the council give, was it 41,000 or 47,000?
It was 41.5.
Okay.
Yeah.
I appreciate the information.
Welcome, and
Great
I
project.
definitely invite you also to come out. I've been in contact with a couple of you, and I would very much like a chance to give you a tour and kind of give you an understanding of, what is your city park basically, and what has been kind of an island and everything
I
else.
think it'd be a good park tour,
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman.
Well, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Okay, anybody have anything else to add? Alderman Scanlon, do you have other comments? Or?
Open to the
Oh, okay.
Why don't we close the floor?
Yeah, let's close the floor first and then the council.
Motion to close the floor.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second to close the floor. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
I would just like to add that I wish that when we voted on dividing up that Packer tax, that we would have made it the parks infrastructure bundle, because I think that's how I understood it, that's how I voted. I think it'd have been good to make that very clear. I don't think we're robbing public works by taking money for parks. Part of this money should be parks. Just how you want to work it out, I trust your judgment. Well, I'll have my say come council.
I trust our judgment, Randy.
But I trust you'll come up with something pretty good. And then we could maybe kick it with it at council or whatever. I just would like to emphasize that I do believe it's appropriate that some of this money goes to parks. It's not robbing public works, because it was always designated that parks should get some, so.
Yeah, unfortunately, the council never designated so much for parks and so much for public works, so we're working kind of in an undefined area here right now. I'd like to suggest that maybe at the Improvement Services Committee, a future meeting, that we review the list of public works priorities, and maybe which items are the most important, on down to the least, and consider that in the context of these requests. Consider these in the context of the whole. I don't know, unless someone wants to make a motion otherwise.
I got a question for Steve Grenier. Didn't we do that already?
No, we didn't. When council took action and we were discussing both the infrastructure monies and the economic development monies, there was discussion relative to applications and preparing a list for the economic development money, and I specifically asked if there was an expectation to do the same thing with the infrastructure money, and the answer was no. So in a broad stroke approach, essentially what happened was that money was turned over and staff was directed to make the biggest impact we could with it. So there was never any intent to bring a list of projects back for funding. As projects were identified and we brought forward contracts, we were planning on identifying these are projects that are funded through the stadium district excess tax monies.
I guess that's how I understood it. I thought that was the priority list.
Yeah, it was never really done, and when
Steve, would you be
the,
able to do that next meeting?
But when the economic development money was, that million was identified for economic development, that was kind of put under the realm of the finance committee, and they created this subcommittee that made recommendations, but nothing was ever really defined for this. I certainly think that between the park committee and improvement services committee, which is the four of us, that it's most appropriate that we look at it in terms of, where the priorities are.
Steve, would you be able to bring a list to us next meeting?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Again, as I've indicated, we're not here to compete with anybody.
Well, I understand that.
Whatever money there is, we'll do the best we can with it.
Right.
Okay, is that okay?
Yeah. So how do you want to handle this, Mr. Chairman?
So I'd say let's table it until, as an improvement services
Okay.
committee, we can have a discussion on the.
Make a motion to table until we look at
Till next meeting.
to review the list from INS, and maybe we could have INS before parks.
Yeah, I would prefer that we do that if we can. Okay?
And Steve, could we start INS at 4 o'clock?
Understood.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I think the next meeting is January 11th, unless we have there's a need for a special meeting. Next scheduled meeting. Chris?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Like Alderman Scannell, I think yourself and others, I always thought and envisioned a portion of this money for infrastructure was for parks. We never really said how much, and I know I asked up to $1 million for Colburn. It looks like we're not going to use any for Colburn now, and we'll hopefully just get a bond for it. But I always thought some of this money was for parks, so we're not robbing it from anybody. It was designated partly for parks. So I'm fine with tonight designating some money, and then what's left, we go through our needs, and designate it. But I'm fine moving ahead tonight. I'll be fine moving ahead next week.
Okay.
I appreciate waiting, but you're waiting a month, and
Okay. Well, how's the rest of the committee feel?
Well, I'd like to see the list from our Department of Public Works.
Okay. John?
I agree with that.
You want to do that too? So I guess that's a consensus, and
Aye.
I'm sorry we're not really prepared to make a decision tonight, but we do have to look at all of this. So, okay,
thank you,
Chris?
Mr. Chairman. I would recommend, I have a feeling this will probably be discussed next week.
Yeah.
So if you're interested in still having a portion of the money, I would come and speak to the full council. There's 8 more council members, and it might not be held up a month, it might.
Great.
Be worth showing up.
That's good. I'll have to bring some residents that are looking for some Department of Public Works money.
Well, all we can do as a committee anyway is make recommendations to the council, but I think we have to look at everything and make our recommendations. Okay. Okay, we're a little bit late for Improvement Services Committee, so let's go on then.
Is there a motion
let's,
in a second?
yeah, let's take a motion then.
Motion to hold until our next meeting.
Okay, to
Do
hold
we
until
have
the next
the
meeting.
the project list? Is that what you call it, Steve?
Sure.
Yeah.
From Department of Public Works, and
Okay,
see what we can do with
okay,
both issues.
okay.
I'll second
Is
that.
that second by Alderman Vandelist? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Right.
Opposed?
No.
Okay. Motion carries. Director's report, we got your report in writing. Would you
Well,
like to go
I'm
over the
just gonna
highlights?
say one thing. Park crews are flooding X-Ranks as we speak this week, and also over the winter, they're going to be remodeling the east end bathrooms, women's bathrooms at Bay Beach. And as we end the year, myself and the fire department would like to thank you for your service to the city of Green Bay. and to also wish you and your families a happy holidays and
Thanks, Donnie.
a
You
good
too.
New Year's.
Yeah.
That's mutual. We appreciate all the support and help we've had. I know it's been a challenge.
And that concludes my report.
When do you expect the ice rinks to be?
I think I saw Marquette flooding.
For middle of next week.
Okay.
We got a big snowstorm coming, so that
Yeah,
just
yeah.
puts us back, but
Okay.
making good progress.
Okay, thank you. We'll keep an eye on it.
Thanks,
Motion to
guys.
adjourn?
We have a motion by Alderman Nicholson, seconded by Alderman Weary to adjourn. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much for being here, everyone.
No, I gotta get going.